They messed with my refund, I messed with their inventory. I'm usually a pretty reasonable person. Organized, bordering on obsessive. I like things neat, tidy, and above all, fair. So, when the brand new, top-of-the-line laptop I'd splurged on started glitching out within a week, I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. I had the receipt, the original box, and it was well within the return window. Famous last words. The laptop was beautiful, sleek, and powerful. I'd envisioned myself conquering the digital world with it. Instead, it started freezing randomly, displaying weird artifacts on the screen, and generally acting like it had a bad case of the digital flu. It was clearly a hardware issue. I hadn't dropped it, spilled anything on it, or done anything remotely reckless with it. I walked into the sprawling electronics store, the same one where I'd bought the thing, feeling optimistic. Mark, the sales associate who'd helped me originally, remembered me. He even commiserated about the laptop's issues. "Yeah, that model's been having some problems," he admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. "Let me get a manager to process the return." That's when Karen appeared. Karen looked like she'd been poured into her store-branded polo shirt. Her expression was permanently set to mildly annoyed, and her voice dripped with condescension. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked, not even looking at me. I explained the situation, carefully detailing the laptop's malfunctioning behavior. I pointed out the return policy, highlighted on the receipt I held out to her. Karen finally glanced at the laptop, then back at me with a dismissive smirk. "I see a scratch on the lid," she said, pointing to an almost imperceptible mark. "That constitutes cosmetic damage. We can't offer a full refund on damaged merchandise. There will be a restocking fee." My blood pressure spiked. "That scratch was there when I bought it," I insisted, my voice rising slightly. "It's practically invisible. And the issue is a hardware malfunction, not cosmetic damage." "Policy is policy," Karen said, her voice flat. "Restocking fee applies." She quoted some obscure paragraph from the return policy. Something about any visible imperfection. Mark shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, avoiding eye contact. He clearly knew this was BS. I argued, pleaded, even offered to have them repair it instead, but Karen wouldn't budge. She was enjoying this. She held all the cards, and she knew it. She offered a partial refund, minus a hefty restocking fee that felt like a slap in the face. Defeated, I took the partial refund. I left the store seething. David, my husband, tried to calm me down. "Just let it go, Sarah," he said. "It's not worth the stress." For a day, I tried. I called customer service. I emailed the district manager. I got nowhere. Every response echoed Karen's decision. It felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall. Then, something snapped. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the principle. It was about being treated unfairly and taken advantage of. I decided I wasn't going to let Karen get away with it. My revenge wouldn't be loud or dramatic. It would be quiet, meticulous, and utterly infuriating. I started researching the store's inventory management system online. I spent hours poring over forums, articles, and even leaked employee manuals. I discovered a vulnerability: returns and open box items. That's when the plan started to form. I began small. I went online and ordered a bunch of cheap items: charging cables, screen protectors, cleaning cloths, all under $10. I made sure to use a different credit card for each purchase and had them shipped to my house. Then the fun began. The first return was a simple charging cable. I went to the store during peak hours, waited in line for 20 minutes, and then presented the cable, neatly packaged in its original box. I told Mark, who was working the returns counter, that it wasn't compatible with my phone. He processed the return without question. The next day, I returned a screen protector. I claimed it was the wrong size. Again, I waited in line, and again, Mark handled the return. I made sure to ask lots of questions, subtly probing for information about how they handled returns and open box items. "So, what happens to these returns?" I asked innocently, pointing to a pile of boxes behind the counter. Mark sighed. "They're supposed to be inspected and restocked, but honestly, we're so busy they often just sit there for days." Bingo. I continued this pattern for the next week. Each return was a carefully orchestrated performance. I'd return 1 or 2 items each day, always during busy periods, always making sure to ask lots of questions and create minor inconveniences. I even roped in 2 of my friends to help, each armed with a handful of cheap items to return. The returns desk became a chaotic mess. The employees looked stressed and overwhelmed. I even saw Karen pacing around, looking increasingly agitated. My interactions with Mark became almost friendly. He knew something was up, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. He seemed to sympathize with my situation, subtly offering tips on how to make the returns process even more complicated. "You know," he said one day, lowering his voice, "if you order something online and then return it in store, it creates even more paperwork." I smiled sweetly. "Thanks for the tip, Mark." It was time to escalate. I identified a high-value, slow-moving item that was easy to return, a fancy, overpriced webcam. I placed a large online order for 10 of them, using yet another credit card. Then, I waited. The delivery was scheduled for a Thursday, which I knew was one of the store's busiest days. I called the delivery company and arranged to miss the delivery at my house. Then, I requested a re-delivery to the store itself, claiming I'd be there to pick it up. The chaos that ensued was glorious. A massive truck pulled up to the store's loading dock, carrying a pallet stacked high with boxes of webcams. The receiving area was already overflowing with merchandise. The already stressed employees were forced to scramble to make room for the unexpected delivery. I arrived at the store shortly after the truck, feigning confusion. I approached Karen, who looked like she was about to explode. "Excuse me," I said, my voice dripping with false innocence. "I think there's been a mistake. I was supposed to pick up a delivery here, but I'm not sure what's in all those boxes." Karen stared at me, her eyes narrowed. "Are you Sarah Miller?" I nodded. "Yes, but I only ordered 1 webcam, maybe 2. I certainly didn't order all of that." I gestured towards the mountain of boxes. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. "We'll have to check the manifest," she said, her voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "This is going to take hours." I watched with satisfaction as the store employees struggled to unload the pallet and find the corresponding paperwork. The returns desk was completely abandoned. Customers were fuming. The entire store was in a state of near-total gridlock. I lingered for a while, adding to the confusion by asking more questions and feigning indecision about whether I even wanted the webcams. I implied that I might return them all anyway, just to watch Karen's reaction. Finally, after about an hour of watching the chaos unfold, I decided to make my exit. "You know what?" I said, sighing dramatically. "This is all too complicated. I think I'll just cancel the order." Karen's jaw dropped. You can't do that." I smiled sweetly. "Actually, I can. I haven't signed for anything. The order is still technically pending. I've changed my mind." I turned and walked away, leaving Karen standing there speechless, surrounded by a mountain of webcams. As I walked past the returns desk, I caught Mark's eye. He gave me a small, knowing smile and a subtle thumbs up. The next day, I received a phone call from a higher-level customer service representative. She apologized profusely for my previous experience and offered me a full refund for the laptop, including the restocking fee. "We value your business," she said, her voice smooth and professional, "and we want to make things right." I accepted the refund, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. I knew my actions had caused significant disruption and annoyance, but I also knew that I had stood up for myself and made a point. David shook his head when I told him the whole story. "You're crazy," he said, but he was smiling. "Maybe I am a little crazy, but sometimes a little bit of crazy is exactly what it takes to get what you deserve." I bought a new laptop from a different store, of course. And every time I use it, I think of Karen and that mountain of webcams. It makes me smile. It was petty? Absolutely. Worth it, every single second.